Good afternoon, and welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes. I say it's afternoon because it is afternoon. It's 1:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. And I'm still here in the lovely and very comfortable city of Dalat, staying at one of the Rosa hotels here in the city. I think this one is the Hotel Rosa Dalat, or something like that, as I talked about in the last video. I have trouble keeping the name of this hotel straight, but that is where I am. And in today's behind the scenes video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about technology at the beginning. It's been a while since I've done a classic Planet Doug rant about all the technology problems in my life. I've had a few of them, so typical sorts of stories. And I guess I'll sum up a little bit about what's been going on here in Dalat, kind of set the context for where I am and what I've been doing. And then I'm going to go back in time and talk about some of the videos that I shot and the experiences that I had when I was in Saigon. I've been so busy the last month, I just have not had the time or the opportunity to record any kind of behind the scenes stories. So right now I'm playing a little bit of catch up because like I said, I haven't been recording these and I really miss them. I really enjoy doing them. So here I am. So yeah, technology, I suppose I can start right here. I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but I have a set of Rode Wireless Go microphones, the Rode Wireless Go 2, which comes with one receiver, two microphones. And this one, the clip snapped off. So yeah, I mean, these have a built-in clip. You clip them to your shirt or to a collar, or you can clip them anywhere. And then, yeah, this one snapped right off. And there's no way to fix it. The plastic itself, where the clip hinge was embedded, it just snapped. It broke right off. You can't super glue it. You can't repair it. It's basically done. And what I did now was I put an elastic band around it, and then I tied this cord to the elastic band. So now it's all kind of bouncing at the bottom of this elastic band. So that's one problem I had. It was very disappointing. Yeah, snapped the buckle right off. And it was my fault to an extent that it happened, because I tend to hook these Rode Wireless Goes over a cord. So actually I put the clip over this cord, but then it turned out that this cord was a bit too thick. So the cord underneath the buckle, underneath the clip, acted as kind of a fulcrum, and it basically applied so much pressure. It was like putting underneath a seesaw. You know, you put a triangle right in the middle of the seesaw, and then you get all this torque on it, and the cord was sitting there, and then the buckle kind of went upwards and just ripped right out of the plastic case. So yeah, there's no way to fix it. And I talked last time about how all the power buttons on these Rodes give me a lot of trouble, and I still haven't been able to fix that. So it does get to be a bit frustrating. It's caused problems for me because I'll wake up in the morning and I'll turn on the Rode receiver. Takes a long time to get it on. I got to push the button, I got to wiggle it, I got to push, I got to wiggle. It takes a lot of work and a lot of jiggling and a lot of experimentation before I finally get the button to engage and the microphone to power on. And it is such a problem that I hesitate during the day to turn it off, because once I turn it off, I may not be able to turn it back on again. Or if something happens really quickly, there's something I want to take video of and it's happening right now, I'm like, oh, got to turn on the GoPro. Okay, turn on the Rode microphone. And by the time I get the microphone to turn on, whatever I wanted to record is already gone. It's already over. So I hesitate to turn it off now. And that means I've left the Rode receiver running all day without ever turning it off. Like even if I stop for lunch and there's an hour where I'm not recording anything, I tend to leave the receiver on because it's such a hassle to turn it off and on. And then, of course, by the end of the day, the battery runs out. And the way this works, you're shooting video with the GoPro, and when the battery dies on the Rode receiver, it doesn't automatically, the GoPro doesn't detect that anymore. So from that point on, you just get dead air. You're not recording any audio at all. And then when you're busy recording, it's actually really hard to see the screen on the road. So there's no flashing red light or anything like that on the receiver. So I can't tell whether it's recording or not. And quite often I'll be wandering around, talking, recording things. And then when I later on, I go to edit the video, I discover there's no audio on any of those clips because the receiver battery died. And I just didn't know that it died. And that's also related to the power button, because the way it works, it does have a little LCD screen, but in order for the LCD screen to light up, you have to push the button, push the power button, and then the light turns on, and you can see, oh, it's still recording. But because the power button doesn't work, I can't actually turn the light on, so I can't see the LCD screen either. So anyway, that's one of my technology problems. Another one is more of a story than a problem, I guess. I've been running out of memory on all levels. I don't have enough memory cards, mainly because I've been shooting in 4K a lot more lately, and 4K video takes up 4 times more space than 1080p video. So suddenly you need 4 times more memory cards. And I've been busy filling up all my memory cards, and then every day it's a real struggle. It's like, all my cards are filled, so I gotta move cards from here to here. I've gotta move all these files around to try and free up a memory card that I can use during the day. So I decided to go out shopping here in Dalat and buy a new one. And turned out to be a lucky thing. I tracked down all these computer stores in Dalat. A friend of mine, Daryl, he often helps me out with these things. He's better at locating things on the internet than I am. I can look for a good computer store for hours and won't find one. He'll look in 2 minutes. Oh, here's a link. There's your computer store. Like, how did you find it? I don't know how he finds these things, but I have trouble. But anyway, he sent me a bunch of links to a whole bunch of computer stores, and I was thinking I could go there and see what kind of memory cards they have, and I could buy a 256 gigabyte memory card. So I head off to do that, and on my way to these computer stores, I happened to pass by a DJI store, an official, big, fancy, fully stocked DJI branded store, an official DJI dealer with all the drones, all the Pocket 2 and Pocket 3 cameras, all the latest accessories. They were fully stocked with everything, and they had a display of memory cards, because if you buy a drone and because you want to shoot video, well, you need a memory card to go along with your drone, so they sell those as well. And to my delight, they had one card that I was interested in. I was looking at either the SanDisk Extreme, which is probably good enough for my purposes. Then there is the SanDisk Extreme Pro, which is a bit faster than the Extreme in terms of read and write speeds. And then there's a company called Lexar, which they also make some good cards. And there's the Lexar Professional Silver and the Lexar Professional Gold. And the gold is way out of my league in terms of cost and speed. They're like V60 cards. All the other ones are V30, like V30 UHS-1 cards. And the Lexar Professional Gold is a V60 UHS-2 card. So it's double the speeds, at least, of the other ones. But as I found out, you don't really need cards that are that fast, because the GoPro doesn't even produce video that fast. So it's a bit of an open question, but I did a little bit of research, and people were saying that the GoPro itself transfers video data at about 80 megabytes per second. Somebody else said it maxes out at 130 megabytes per second. So that's the maximum you can expect, between 80 and 130. So if you have a memory card that can record data at 240 megabytes per second or 300 megabytes per second, well, that's good for you, but it doesn't do the GoPro any good, because it can't transmit video data that fast anyway. So you're basically paid for a very fast card, and all of that extra speed is just going to waste anyway. So the gold was out of the question. What I really wanted, to be honest, was a SanDisk Extreme Pro, because I have confidence in those cards, and the speed was about what I wanted. But unfortunately, they didn't have 256 gigabytes. The biggest they had, I think, was 128. But they happened to have one type of Lexar. So this is the Lexar Professional Silver. I think you can see the silver up at the top. And it is 256 gigabytes. And on the card, I was quite surprised to see that it has a 160 megabyte per second read speed and 120 megabytes per second write speed. And that's actually faster than the SanDisk Extreme Pro, which is a more expensive card. So this one is actually less expensive and yet faster than the SanDisk. So I thought, okay, I'll take a chance on this one. Give me that. Really nice people at the store, two young women there, the sales clerk, and I was chatting with them. I was trying to be funny. I was just trying to be very lighthearted and have some fun, making jokes with them, things like that. And I made the purchase, paid for it, and then they handed it to me. And then I noticed a couple of things I didn't like. One was that the package was open. Like you see here on the back, there's a slit. You basically just pop open the slit, and then you can pull out this, which has the memory card in it. And then I paid for it, and they handed it to me, and I noticed, oh, it's an open package. And that immediately sets off alarm bells, right? Because now it's no longer factory sealed. And why isn't it factory sealed? What is it, like secondhand? You already sold it to somebody, they returned it, and now you're selling me a used product? Or did someone along the line remove the original Lexar and replace it with a counterfeit? You just don't know, because it's not factory sealed anymore. And I did say to the women, oh, listen, I'm not really happy about that. Do you think you could give me another one? Because they had two of them. They didn't have very many on the shelf. They had two of these. And I said, can I have the other one, assuming it was still sealed? And they says, well, that one's open too. All of our memory cards, the packaging, we had to open it, they said. And I guess they had to do it. I didn't really understand what they were talking about, but they said they had to open it in order to access the warranty information. So they assured me that it's brand new, it's from the factory, it's real, it's not counterfeit, it's not broken. They just took out some warranty information, and they had to open the package to do that. And I was a little bit, what do you do? But I needed a memory card, and I'm pretty sure everything was genuine, but at the same time, I wasn't really happy about that. But anyway, that's what I got. And they gave me a Choco Pie as a present, as a going away present. So anyway, I have this new card, and I was very happy about the faster writing speed, because I do a lot of, not just inside the GoPro, but after I finish shooting video, I have to copy the video from the card to my laptop, or from the card to an external drive. And that can take a long time. It can take an hour, hour and a half to copy all the video. And if this thing does it 50% faster, well, that saves me a lot of time every day when I'm copying video files. So when I came back here, I wanted to do a test, and I just happened to be in a situation where I needed to copy about 250 gigabytes of video to a memory card. So what I did was I put the memory card, I took a SanDisk Extreme 256 gigabyte card, and I did the copy. And it took about somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour, but let's call it 45 minutes. I think it took 45 minutes by the time it was done. So the Extreme, 45 minutes, okay? And then I took the Lexar and I put it into the same system, and I started copying the exact same files, and it said it would take 45 minutes. I was like, oh, come on. It's the exact same write speed as the SanDisk Extreme. And that didn't make any sense, because I think the SanDisk Extreme, I'm not sure if I have the numbers here right away, but maybe I have them here. Yeah, the SanDisk Extreme, no, I don't have it. But it's a much, much lower write speed. So this card should have taken like 20 minutes to do the same job, but it took the same amount of time as the cheaper, slower speed SanDisk Extreme card. So I thought, it's got to be fake then. It has to be counterfeit, because I'm not getting 120 megabytes per second write speed. So I thought, well, yeah. So then I decided to do a more extreme test, and I downloaded an app to my Mac, and this program actually runs a test and tells you what the read and write speeds are of all your devices. So it's more accurate than me just doing my own copying thing. So I downloaded this app, I got it up and running, and I ran a test, and the SanDisk Extreme writes data at 80 megabytes per second. That's what the app reported. So 80 megabytes per second. So then I put in my Lexar, ran the same test, and guess what it said? 80 megabytes per second. Exactly the same, no difference between the two. So I'm thinking, well, where's the 120 megabytes per second? So again, I'm thinking, okay, that's it. I'm going to go back to DJI the next morning, and I'm going to get my money back. I made a screenshot of all my testing. I can show them the write speed, 80 megabytes per second. It's supposed to be 120, so there's something wrong with this card. I was all set to do that, and then I thought, well, why don't we test another card? And I got out a SanDisk Extreme Pro. I don't have a 256 Pro card. I only have a 64 gigabyte card, but the test is identical. So I put in the SanDisk Extreme Pro, which should be much, much faster than the Extreme. I tested it, and guess what the test results were? 80 megabytes per second. Everything was the same. No matter what card I put in, every single card returned the same write speed, 80 megabytes per second. And then finally, the penny dropped, and I figured out what was going on. My memory card reader maxes out at 80 megabytes per second. It's an old one. I didn't even know it had a speed limit. I've been using this for over a decade. As far as I know, I've had this thing forever. A Transcend. Put your little memory card in here, USB-C, and copy your files. But this is not USB 3.2. This is USB whatever came way before 3. This is so old. And it turns out that all of my testing was irrelevant, because even if the card can read data or write data at 120 megabytes per second, it's throttled by the memory card, because the memory card can only transmit data at 80 megabytes per second. So in fact, this entire time, I wasn't testing the cards, I was only testing my memory card reader. And I was so happy to figure that out, because as I said, I was all set to just march back to DJI, and I was going to show them my test. Look, it's 80 megabytes per second. It's supposed to be 120. What's going on here? But it turns out, had I done that, it would have been very embarrassing, because later on I eventually would have figured out that no, maybe it does work at 120 megabytes per second. It's this that's causing the problem. Of course, I'm only guessing that to be the case, but it's like a 99% guess. Nothing else makes any sense, because the Extreme Pro, the Lexar Silver, all three of them were delivering exactly the same test results, 80 megabytes per second. So anyway, I went out into the city. I went out into Dalat today to buy another memory card reader. But one of the disadvantages of being in a city like Dalat is you don't have the same selection that you do in a place like Saigon or Kuala Lumpur. So I went to a whole bunch of computer stores, and nobody even sells memory card readers. I couldn't find one anywhere. So I've not been able to duplicate my test with a higher speed memory card reader. In my last behind the scenes video, I was talking quite a bit about problems I've been having with exporting video files, editing them and exporting them, because I have been shooting in 4K, and that's turning out to be problematic. And the last video I was trying to export, when I started the export job from DaVinci Resolve from my MacBook, it gives you an estimated amount of time. How long is it going to take to complete this export job? And the initial estimate was 2 days and 3 hours. And then, of course, it didn't actually take that long, but that was the initial estimate, basically 51 hours, more than 2 days of non-stop exporting to finish it. But that number came down and down and down. And I can't remember how long it actually took. I think I eventually was looking at an estimate of about 15 hours total, but it ended up taking a lot longer than that. I had it exporting all day, the entire day, and then all night. It still wasn't finished. So basically, I went to sleep at night. I went to sleep and my laptop was still there, churning and churning and churning with hours yet to go. And then I woke up at some point during the night, or woke up in the morning, and I looked over and my laptop was off. It wasn't running anymore. So during the night, it had just shut down, and I turned on the laptop and I went to look, and the export job had failed. So all that time, the entire day and the entire night of just babysitting my laptop, and I was unable to do any other video editing. I can't do anything on the laptop until it finishes exporting the last video. So I waited the whole day, unable to do any more work, waited the entire night. I went to sleep still waiting, and then I woke up in the morning and I had to start all over again from zero, because the whole thing just failed. Yeah, the export, I don't know why, can't tell you. Something happened towards the end and the export job just failed. I had no exported file. So I had to do it all over again. So it was another entire day and night, and I finally managed to get it to export. I babysat the laptop the entire time. I didn't dare leave it. I didn't dare go to sleep. I just had to watch it to make sure nothing went wrong. And it turned out I was quite lucky, because it finished exporting, and then a short time later, the power went out. The whole hotel went black, and the power was gone for, 30 minutes or something like that. And it occurred to me that if that ever happened during a video export, again, the export would cancel, and I'd lose it. And that's probably what happened during the night, because my laptop doesn't have any battery power. So when the power goes out, the laptop just shuts down, because it doesn't have battery power at all. So I think during the night, that's one of my guesses anyway. This is what happened, that during the night at one point, we're at like over 90% finished when I went to sleep. And then the next morning, it was like, I think the power went out during the night, and the laptop just shut down and canceled the export job. I lost everything that it had done. So yeah, that's life when you're shooting 4K video. To balance that out, I have a couple of positive technology stories. One is that here in Vietnam, the uploading speeds through hotel Wi-Fi is phenomenal. It is so fast, far beyond anything I ever experienced in Malaysia. And of course, it goes without saying, when I was in Sumatra, there's no comparison. It took days to finish uploading a file out of Sumatra. But here in Vietnam, I can have a 30 gigabyte file, even a 50 gigabyte file to upload to YouTube, and it finishes it in a couple of hours. Just zoom. Goes so fast. I cannot believe it. So that is something that is positive. And the other positive thing is, this happened because I needed to download that app for my MacBook, like speed testing app. But in order to do that, I had to sign into my Apple ID account. And my Apple ID account has always been a problem for some reason. Ages ago, somebody hacked it, and I got tons of charges through iTunes. Someone was using my account and my credit card, and they bought all kinds of, I guess, iTunes cards, like gift cards and music, all kinds of things, charging it all to my account. This was when I was in Myanmar, a long time ago. I was right in the middle of moving from Myanmar to Thailand, crossing the land border there. And then right in the middle of doing that, suddenly I had a huge credit card bill, people using my iTunes account. So somehow my Apple ID had been compromised. And then I lost my credit card, of course, and that turned into a huge problem. But ever since then, I've been scared of ever using my Apple ID or anything. I don't sign into it. I don't do anything. And then it makes a lot of sense because I don't use any Apple products. I'm using a MacBook, but I'm using Google Chrome. So I'm still operating within a Windows PC world. But on the MacBook, I don't use iMessage, I don't use iCloud, I don't use I. There's all these I products that everybody loves when they're in the Apple ecosystem, but I don't know anything about them. I've never used them, so I don't need them. And every time I turn on my laptop, I get a message that says, oh, there was a problem logging into your iMessage. Please go to your Apple ID, your Apple account, and fix the problem. And in the past, I've tried to fix the problem, and I go in there and I log in and I look around and I don't see any problems and I leave again. But the next time it says, oh, there was a problem. We couldn't log you into FaceTime because of a problem with your Apple ID account. Please fix it. And now I ignore all those messages. They just pop up constantly, and I just click on them and go later. Every time I turn on the MacBook, I get a whole series of them, and I just go click, close. I never do anything about them. But now I wanted to download this app from the Apple Store, and the only way you can do that is by signing in to your Apple ID account, whatever you call that thing. So I did, and then that made me very nervous because now I was signed into my account, and every time I do that, I'm nervous that someone is somehow going to see that I'm signing in, and somehow they're going to steal my credentials, and I'm going to lose control of it again. So then I got this idea, well, maybe we should take another look at turning on two-factor authentication. And I have two-factor authentication on everything I own, like anything Windows, PC-based, every app from the Google Play Store, everything I use, I set up the maximum amount of security that I can, including two-factor authentication. And I can do that because all of those Windows and PC programs, they all use authenticator apps. So you can download something like, there's a Google app, and then there's Authy, and then this Authenticator app is on your phone, and two-factor authentication involves launching the app, the Authenticator app, and you get a code that's good for 60 seconds, and you take that code and insert it into the program as part of the login procedure. And that is a very powerful security method, because for anyone to ever log into any of my accounts, they have to have my phone to do it. They actually have to have my physical phone with the Authenticator app, and it works beautifully. It's a great system. But of course, Apple is different. As far as I can tell, Apple doesn't have anything like that. And every time I tried to turn on two-factor verification, they said, we have to send the code to your phone number, like an SMS. And I could never do that because I don't have a phone number. When you don't have a home base and you get a new SIM card every 2 months because you're in a new country, then you can't use any of these things. So I've never been able to turn on two-factor authentication for Apple, because I can't receive any of these codes. But then it occurred to me, I do have a phone number. It's through a company called Fongo in Canada. So it's basically an internet phone number. It's based on the internet. There's no physical house, there's no phone line, there's no telephone, but it mimics in most ways an actual residential phone number in Canada. So when you call that number, it's exactly like you are calling a number in Canada. But the problem with it is that it can't accept security codes. I tried it out with my bank, for example. I thought, oh, I can use this with my bank and they can send me codes to this phone number. But because it's an internet-based number, the bank computers can sniff that out and they don't trust it, and then the Fongo number can't accept these codes unless you buy a package, a special package. But even then, based on all the forums, people say, well, it may work, it may not work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that whole route wasn't really an option to me. But this time, as I was investigating it, I saw something new on Apple, and it said, we can call your number. We don't send a text and a message. We actually call the number. And I thought, maybe that will work. I was really nervous about setting this up because I figured if I start the process and I say, okay, turn on two-step verification using phone calls to my phone number, and I turn it on, and then I can't receive the phone call, now am I going to be locked out of my Apple account forever? Because there's just no way to get past that barrier. And I've seen stories online of people in that situation, and they can never get out of it. They're stuck in a loop. But I thought, maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll work. Let's do it. I was feeling courageous. So there I was with my phone in my hand, and I'm going to turn on two-step verification, and I have to choose SMS or phone call. And I said, okay, phone call, and then I hit do it. And within seconds, my phone rang. It just started ringing to my Fongo number, and I answered, and it was a computer from Apple saying, your code is, and then this friendly voice gave me the numbers for the code, and I entered the code. So apparently a Fongo number, an internet-based phone number, can be used for security codes delivered by phone call, but it can't be used for SMS. But if you're willing to just get a phone call, works beautifully. So that was another technology triumph in my life. So good things, bad things. Keeping with the theme of technology for now, I do have some thoughts about video editing that have been kicking around in my head, because for a while now, I haven't had any time to do video editing, very little anyway. I've been quite busy. I came up to Dalat with my friend Daryl, and we spent a couple of days here zooming around, a lot of attractions. And then even down in Saigon, I was quite busy. Daryl had set up a lot of get-togethers with friends of his. It's one of Daryl's superpowers. He's very good at bringing people together, which I appreciate very much. I wouldn't have a social life if it wasn't for Daryl, so I appreciate that very much. And but yeah, I haven't been doing a lot of editing, but then Daryl hopped on a day bus 2 days ago, I guess. He left, went back to Saigon, and for the last couple of days, I've been spending a lot of time trying to get caught up with things, getting my video files organized, all of my memory systems organized, all my memory cards, things like that, and editing videos, trying to get caught up a little bit. And that led to a few thoughts about editing. One is this idea of whether or not extra information added to a video is worth the effort of doing it. For me personally, the way my brain works, I like information. So when I'm editing a video about a place, a building, something to do with history, a museum, some food, and at the time, of course, you don't know very much, because a travel vlog, if that's what you want to call these videos, they're happening in real time. They're not planned, they're not scripted, so you may or may not know what it is you're dealing with. So I might stop at the side of the street and I'm getting a snack and I'm eating the snack, but I have no idea what the food is called. But then while I'm editing the video, I can look it up. I can find out what the name of that food is. I can find out the history of that food, what the ingredients are. So now I have all this information that I didn't have at the time when I was eating the food. So now I'm editing the video. I can, if I so choose, put in a little text box down at the bottom. And now I can have the name of the food, even though I didn't know it at the time. So I can take the time to find it, copy, paste it, translate it into Vietnamese, into English. Google Maps, if I'm going somewhere and I'm talking about it, I can take the time to open up Google Maps and show where I am and where I went, and then I can take a screenshot, insert that into the video. And I had an example recently that I was going to use for this discussion, and it was... yes, this was an interesting one. I was editing a video in which I went to the Diamond Plaza shopping mall in Saigon. And at the time, my friend Rod, he was showing me around this neighborhood of Saigon, and he brought me to the Diamond Plaza Mall. And one of the things he told me was that the Diamond Plaza, as far as he was aware, was the very first big modern shopping mall in Saigon. So he said that, but I didn't know whether that was true or not, and I didn't know when it was built. And I was curious about that because a big theme of my visit to Vietnam this time is how much it has changed since I visited in the mid-90s. And so while I was editing the video, I got to the Diamond Plaza portion. So then I went to look, and I found out the history of the Diamond Plaza, and it was indeed the very first shopping mall in the city, and they started construction in 1995. That's when they started building it. And I was in Vietnam in 1995, before they'd even started construction. So to me, that was like an interesting factoid that, yes, it is the very first shopping mall in Saigon. It was built in 1995, or that's when they started construction, and it didn't even exist when I came to Vietnam, on my first visit. And to me, that's all very interesting information, because as I was walking around Saigon, I remarked to myself and to other people quite often that, all these buildings, like all these skyscrapers, everything around me, none of that was there when I was here in 1995. So right now, when you're in Saigon and you look across the city, the horizon is just nothing but skyscrapers. But when I was there in 95, it would have been basically a flat horizon, just nothing but 1-2-story buildings going all the way to the horizon. None of that would have existed, and even the shopping mall would not have existed. So when I came to Vietnam in 95, there would have been no shopping malls at all, which is kind of a crazy thing to think about, because right now, all these modern Asian cities, of course, are jammed with state-of-the-art, huge shopping malls. So I found that was interesting. So then the question is, okay, do I put all that information into a text box on the video? My instinct is to say, yes, put it in. Why not? More information is better. So I do have a habit of inserting a lot of captions with text, just giving information, names, dates, things like that. But the other day, I was watching a video from some other YouTubers who put a lot of work into their production. They do a lot of very professional production work. And they put in a lot of these sorts of pop-ups all the time. So then everything they see pops up on the screen with the name of that thing. Everything they buy, there's a pop-up that shows the price in Vietnamese dong, and then the US dollar equivalent, and maybe the euro equivalent. But anyway, they provide a ton of information popping up on the screen. And as I was watching their video, I just got annoyed with them. I didn't care about any of this stuff. Like all this information that they were giving me through the video in text and graphics, I found it starting to bother me. I didn't want the information. I didn't need it to enjoy the video. And then it kept throwing me out of the video, out of their experience, because I'm stopping to read all these text boxes and look at all the graphics. And I know from experience how long it takes to put all that stuff in. And then I started thinking, well, you know what? These people are putting all this time and effort into putting in all those captions and graphics. And yet me, as one of their viewers of their videos, they actually bother me. I don't like them. So all the work they're doing is actually making their video worse rather than better. That's how it seemed to me. And if that's the case for them, then maybe it's the same for my videos, and I just shouldn't bother doing it. Maybe it actually makes the video less enjoyable to constantly have captions showing up at the bottom of the screen, giving information about things. I don't know. It was just a thought that went through my mind. A couple other things I noticed about editing recently is that sometimes it's more fun to edit a video that's a bit older. Obviously, I think in the world of YouTube, the more current your video is, the better. I mean, if I can go to the Dalat night market tonight, shoot video, and post the video tonight or tomorrow, well, obviously that's the best because everything is happening in real time. That's the ideal, but in reality, that's kind of a pipe dream. It's impossible to do. Nobody can keep up that kind of schedule unless they're making an extremely simplistic, extremely short type of video, and they're not making a lot of videos, and they're exceptionally good at time management. But it would be very hard to do that. So you naturally are posting videos of experiences that happened a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a month ago. I mean, there are many YouTubers out there who are very popular and get hundreds of thousands of views. And I know from detective work that their videos are a year old, 6 months old, 8 months old, and nobody seems to care. It's a little bit annoying, I think, for viewers because they'll post a video from Hanoi and then all these people are leaving comments saying, oh, you should go here in Hanoi, and oh, you got to check out this food, and go to this restaurant, and go there, giving them all this helpful advice to make their time in Hanoi better. But of course, these people, they were in Hanoi last year, and they're just finally getting around to editing the video and posting them. So that's that's on the negative side. So I do try to do it as quickly as possible. But I notice that there is a certain enjoyment in letting a little bit of time go by, because then when I personally am editing the video, it feels fresh and exciting to me, and I have more fun editing it because it didn't happen yesterday. It might have happened 2 weeks ago. And then now a lot of other experiences have happened in the meantime. And now as I'm editing the video, it's like new and exciting to me. It's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, that was fun. And it makes the editing process more enjoyable. So that's one thing that I picked up on. That was kind of cool. And also recently I've been making a lot of videos with other people. So with Daryl, of course, Daryl flew into Saigon. He and I spent a lot of time together for about 5 days, 6 days. And then that time together, it's just more fun to shoot video when you're with someone else. Someone you're bouncing ideas off them. You're laughing and joking and goofing around and things like that. And when I was in Saigon, I got together with Rod, I already mentioned, and that was fun. The video I'm editing right now is when I went out with Rod during the day, and we had some fun because there were times too when I handed Rod my camera because I wanted to do something, or he wanted me to do it actually. There were these exercise machines in the park, and I wanted to try them out. And normally, how do you do that? You film yourself, or you got to go mount the camera somewhere, and it all ends up feeling a little bit stilted. But now, Rod just give me the GoPro. So he was holding the GoPro, and then I was playing around on all the machines. And you can do stuff like that. Daryl can hold the camera for a minute while I talk about my omelet that I'm having for breakfast or something. So it's fun, and the energy level rises. And when I was in Canton, I went out to the night market with a local man that I met there, and then just going out with him at night to the market was a much more entertaining experience. It will probably result in a more entertaining video. And I went to a market in Saigon with a woman that I met there. She's an English teacher, speaks English well, knows a lot about the local food, and she has experience in tourism and hospitality. And she was an exceptional guide and companion for me to just spend time with her, and we went through the market together. And I'm looking forward to editing that video as well. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time with local people and other people, and shooting video as part of like just two people together. Oh, and I went to Chinatown in Saigon with two other YouTubers. Jamie, who's from Vietnam, he's a Vietnamese YouTuber. And he and I went around Cho Lun together. And that was a lot of fun too, just spending time with other people. So that was something else I've picked up on lately. Last thing I noticed is also when you're editing video, you actually see a lot of things and hear a lot of things that you missed in real time. So like the video I'm editing right now, we were walking, I was with Rod, a fellow Canadian in Saigon, and we're walking down this street. And then I guess he said something to me about where we were going and why we were going there, why it was important. But at the time, I was thinking about something else. I was looking at the GoPro, and I missed it completely. I didn't hear what he said. So we walked all the way down this alleyway, and we looked at some restaurants, and then we came out again. And I filmed all of that, and it was all very interesting. But at the time, I realize now, I didn't even know why we were there. I didn't know what the significance of this place was. But now that I'm editing the video, I heard him say something to me, and I missed it at the time. But he was telling me that down this laneway, there was a Banh Seo restaurant that was made famous by Anthony Bourdain. So I guess Anthony Bourdain went to this Banh Seo restaurant in this alley. It was included in one of his shows, and now it has become super famous and is a tourist attraction in its own right, that all foreigners go to that place to have Banh Seo, and because Anthony Bourdain went there. And I filmed the whole thing, and I had no idea that's why we were there. Rod was showing me the restaurant and talking about, oh, it's filled with all these foreigners and tourists from all these different countries. And I'm like, okay, cool. But at the time, I didn't know anything about the Anthony Bourdain connection, because he said it, but I didn't hear him at the time. And a lot of that. And even the type of food where he kept saying Banh Seo, and the words didn't sink into my brain because Vietnamese words just don't. And Vietnamese food is very complicated to me. And at the time, he would talk about, oh yeah, we can have Banh Seo down there. And I have no idea what he's talking about, because he says it assuming I know what Banh Seo is. I don't know what it is. It could be not even a food. It could be something else he's talking about. But he would mention it assuming, well, obviously you know what this is. And no, I didn't. But in the video, while I'm editing the video, I heard him say Banh Seo. And I went, Banh Seo? What the heck is that? And I went to Google Chrome, and I just started typing in. I didn't know how to spell it even. And I typed in Banh, it must be like Banh Mi, B-A-N-H. And I tried to type out Seo, and then all these weird results kept coming up. And I kept altering the spelling more and more until finally this Vietnamese food popped up. It's like, that's Banh Seo. That's what Rod was talking about. And then it turned out later on we were having lunch at a very nice restaurant, and one of the dishes that he ordered, and he probably ordered it because of the whole Anthony Bourdain Banh Seo connection. In his mind, we'd been talking about Banh Seo all afternoon. So we went into the restaurant, we're looking at the menu, and he ordered Banh Seo, and we're talking about this, and to me it looked like an omelet, I guess, or something like that. And then now that I'm editing the video, it's like, oh, that's Banh Seo and Anthony Bourdain, and it all came together, and I understood none of this at the time. I only figured it all out later while I was editing the video this morning, in fact. So I thought that was kind of amusing. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. I do a little bit of research. If I know I'm going to a historical site or a temple, I try to read up on it before I go there. I don't need to know everything, but I want to know a little bit about where I am. But quite often, I don't know very much. And then when I'm editing the video, then I have the time, I have the leisure to stop editing and go into Google and type in the name of that temple or the museum or whatever it is and start reading about it. It's like, that's, now I suddenly know far more while I'm editing than I did when I was actually there, which is kind of strange. And again, that raises the question again of, okay, all this extra knowledge, what do I do with it? Should I put it in the video anyway? Or is it just pointless to do that? Because you don't really need it. You can have an entertaining video without any information at all. Lots and lots of YouTubers do it. They go to countries, they go to places, and they don't know anything about where they are, what they're doing. And millions of people watch their videos and love them. So all the work other YouTubers do, research and getting knowledge and filling their videos with information, like a lot of that, unless you have your own personal pride in doing that, it's probably not even necessary. And more important, I'm wondering whether it actually hurts the video in the long run, because you have to understand what it is you're making. So like Steven Spielberg, he makes a movie called Jaws about a great white shark that he's telling an entertaining story, but it's not like in the middle of the movie he's going to start putting factoids about the great white shark all over the screen while the movie is going on. Obviously, that's ridiculous. You wouldn't do that in a movie, but it makes you think about a YouTube video. Well, if someone wants to be entertained by watching a movie, they don't want to be distracted by a little factoid about the dietary habits of the great white shark and its migratory patterns throughout the oceans. No, you want to see people getting chomped on by the great white shark. That's what the movie is about. And then maybe a YouTube travel video is the same. You don't need to be bombarded with a history lesson or a cultural lesson or a linguistic lesson about that country. You can put in a little bit, a little sprinkling, but I think maybe you can go too far and you actually make the video worse rather than better. So those have been my thoughts the last couple of days as I've been editing video. That was all the technology and YouTube thoughts in my head. And I guess I said that after that I would talk a little bit about Dalat. I'm not quite sure what I've already talked about in a behind-the-scenes video to this point about my whole experience here. I have a vague memory of talking about a few things, but I'll just go through the story briefly. And the story is that my friend Daryl from the Wander Eats YouTube channel, he was coming to Saigon for his own reasons. He had a business trip planned to come here. And then he suggested that he and I could come up to Dalat together. Well, he was going to go to Dalat anyway. He always wanted to visit Dalat, and this was a chance for him to do so. And he says, hey, if you're interested, come along. We can both head up there. So yeah, I said, sounds good to me. And then Daryl made all of the arrangements. So he looked into booking a bus, booking a hotel, and he was also planning his videos. He's very much into food, and he was looking at all the different restaurants here that he could try out some regional specialties at highly recommended restaurants, things like that. He was planning all of his activities, and he had a couple other things that he wanted to do while he was here. So he was doing a lot of research into Dalat, and to be honest, I wasn't doing any at all. I was in Saigon and then down in Kanto at the time, and I was so busy there with my own things that I thought, well, when the time comes, like right now, I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is meet Daryl and then get on this night bus, which I've never done. I've probably been on a night bus at some point in my life. I don't ever remember doing it. But the night buses here in Vietnam are on a whole different level. So, but basically all I had to do was leave all that up to Daryl, He's booking the tickets. He knows the schedule. He knows everything. And I figured out we could get to Dalat. And then once we're here, then I can start looking around and do some reading and some research and figure out what Dalat is all about. So I wasn't really doing any planning at all. And then Daryl and I spent a couple of days in Saigon, had a really good time there. And then came the night for the night bus. And that was a bit of an adventure. I'm never quite sure what to call these things because there are buses, like sleeper buses, full-sized, like Greyhound-sized buses, but they all have sleeping pods built into them. So there's sleeping buses, but this one, what Daryl booked, was more like a smaller van. Somewhere in between a van and a bus. So I'm not quite sure what to call them, but I think you might be able to call them like limousine bus. So that is what Daryl booked. And so we took one of those up to Dalat. Daryl was very successful at sleeping during the night, so he arrived in Dalat quite rested. I think I must have dozed off at some point. I was expecting a completely sleepless night. And then I would arrive in Dalat exhausted and barely able to enjoy myself because I was going to be so tired. And yet when we arrived at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, something like that, I felt really good. So I don't remember sleeping at all. And yet I felt so good. The only explanation was that I did get some sleep during the night. The bus left at around 11:15. And it arrived right on time. Everything in Vietnam is extremely punctual and well organized, I'm finding. So we left at 11:15 and we got in at, like I said, 5:36, something like that. We had one small adventure, which was a lot of fun. The limousine van had a big sliding door, like the entire side of the van essentially was a giant door. And the whole thing is automated because everything is run by computers these days. Even your car and your van and your bus are all run by computers. And the door is automatic. The driver just hits a button and zzz, it opens and zzz, closes again. But the darn thing wouldn't close. We dropped someone off, a fellow Canadian actually. There was another Canadian in the limousine with us. And we dropped him off before we got into Dalat city itself. And then we dropped him off, and then the door would not close. Well, in fact, it wouldn't open. That's right, it wouldn't even open at first. And the only way the Canadian could get out was to climb over the seats into the front seats where the driver, and then like climb over the seats into the front and then get out that door, which you open and close manually. But the automatic door, wouldn't open. And then they fought with it for a long time and finally got it to open, but then they couldn't get it to close. So they fought with it for a long time after that. We couldn't exactly go roaring down the highway with the door wide open. It would catch the wind and maybe just tear it right off or something, who knows. But they eventually figured something out, just trying over and over and over again. They finally got it to close. And then we were driven to our hotel, directly to our hotel in Dalat. And then the door wouldn't open again. It came partially open, like just a couple of inches, and then it just got stuck again. And they tried to open it for a long time, and eventually Daryl and I had to do the same thing. We had to climb over the seats into the front seat and then head out the side there. So there we were, bright and early. The sun had just risen, basically, and we had arrived. And the very first, we dropped off our bags in the lobby and rented a scooter. The hotel had one available for us, and then we hopped on the scooter and spent a good chunk of the day just driving around Dalat, exploring the lakeshore area, going all over the place. So that was a really good day. And two of the attractions that Daryl had picked out, one is called the Crazy House. Now that I'm talking about it, I feel like I did already mention it, but it was. So it is a very large, sort of a fantasy fairy tale house designed by a Vietnamese architect, and was inspired a little bit by a Spanish architect I forget the guy's name now, but there's a very famous set of buildings in Spain that have kind of like drooping, melting sorts of features, like a fantasy land. And I think the Vietnamese architect took some inspiration from that and built this incredible complex of interlinking buildings, each one kind of with a theme and different designs and styles and all kinds of narrow passageways and outdoor walkways that yeah, the whole thing is really amazing. I wasn't expecting it to be as interesting as it was, but it was quite interesting, and I spent a lot of time there. I went through the whole thing shooting video, went through the whole thing taking pictures, and then I went through the whole thing again with a 360 camera trying to record like a true 360 video of the place. And the other thing that Daryl really wanted to do was an alpine coaster, and that was quite interesting. We had the scooter, so we were able to drive out into the countryside a little bit, stopping for a really nice breakfast along the way. And we went to this alpine coaster. And it costs 250,000 dong per person. And you get into one of these sleds that go, it's like a roller coaster, essentially, that's run by gravity. You start at the top of the hill, and then you climb into the sled, put on your seatbelt, and you've got these two bars, one on each side, and when you push it forward, it releases the brake, and then you can go racing down the hill, and then if you want to slow down, you pull back and you brake a little bit. So we did that, and that was quite an interesting experience. It was quite a busy day, which is a good or a bad thing, depending on your perspective. I'm cool either way, to be honest, because if it's really busy, it means you stand in line for a relatively long time. And when you get on the tracks, chances are that there's somebody ahead of you going really slowly. So if you wanted the adrenaline rush of just going really, really fast as you can all the way down, you may be disappointed because someone ahead of you is more timid and they've slowed down, and they get this traffic jam basically builds up behind them, and you end up just sort of stopping and starting and going down the hill quite slowly, which is more or less what we had to do because it was so busy. But there were still enough points. It's like total distance, 2.5 kilometers. You go down a section, winding and curving, and at the bottom you get out and you look at a waterfall, and there's a beautiful area down there with walkways and pathways. And then you get back in the sled for the second half that brings you all the way back to the beginning. Put all of it together, and it's about 2.5 kilometers long. So even if you do end up going slower than you'd like most of the time, there will still be a couple of points where you can just go full throttle and race around the corner, and you really feel some G's because you got a tight corner, and that was quite fun. But so I was saying, the fact that it's so crowded, you can look at it as a negative, but there are positive things as well, because half the fun of going to one of these places is just being around a whole bunch of other people. So as you go through the lineup, you get to look at all the other people in the lineup. And then the closer and closer you get to the front of the line, you actually get to watch all the other people going down the hill on their coaster, on their alpine coaster. And you hear people screaming, people that are scared, going around the corner. And yeah, you just get to enjoy people watching, basically. And then even when you're going down in the coaster, if you're going slower than you'd like, you get to watch other people do various things. Way down at the bottom where we were supposed to get off, I didn't realize we were supposed to get off at that point. I thought it was just a traffic jam and a couple of coasters ahead of me. Daryl was in the one directly ahead of me, and then there was 3 or 4 more coasters, sleds, whatever you call them. And somebody had dropped their phone. And I guess it was pretty good timing in a way, because anywhere else where you dropped it, you'd have a heck of a time getting it back. And they do tell you as you get into these coasters, like, you're not allowed to use your phone while the coaster is in, or at all. Don't use your phone because they know you're going to drop it. And you can't use a selfie stick. Both Daryl and I planned ahead, being YouTubers. So Daryl had a neck mount where you can he could attach, he had his Action 4 camera, DJI Action 4, and he mounted it here on his chest with a neck harness. And I had a chest harness, my GoPro chest harness, so I had a GoPro mounted on my chest as well. So both of us, we were thinking we'd be okay. There were signs saying, don't take video, but I think what they meant was you're not allowed to have like a big selfie stick with a camera on the end and filming yourself, because you're supposed to be holding onto the brakes. And if you do this, you're going to lose control and you could smash into somebody ahead of you. And or you can end up dropping this and losing it and just causing trouble. But anyway, we were down at the very bottom and everybody had come to a stop, and then someone had taken out their phone to take selfies. I did as well. I was taking video with my GoPro, but I also took selfies with my phone, things like that. And this person was taking a selfie, and then Butterfingers, they dropped their phone. And then I was sort of watching them from behind, and they're like leaning out of the sled, like trying so hard to reach the ground. And the phone was just out of reach of their fingertips. And apparently the seatbelt is locked because we're all buckled in with the seatbelt. And I was thinking, ooh, maybe if they can't get their phone back, maybe as I get closer, maybe I can reach it because I've got longer arms, or if not, I can open the seatbelt, I can just pop. Like you could get on the ground pretty easily, jump out of your sled, grab the phone, jump back in the sled. I'm sure you're not supposed to do that, but this was all going through my head. Can I do this? Would I be able to do it? But I don't think you can even unbuckle your seatbelt. I never did try because I didn't have to, but I think Daryl found out later that the seatbelt actually locks and you can't release it while you're on the ride. It won't release until you get to the end. But anyway, the people ahead of me, someone behind them eventually with longer arms, or I think they used a foot and a hand or something. They just managed to get a couple of fingers on that phone and pick it back up, so they didn't lose their phone. So you get all kinds of stuff like that that's entertaining that you can watch. But to be honest, while I was doing all of this, I was thinking that you want the thrill of piloting this sled around the corners at high speed. And we got there by scooter. We rented a scooter. And with the scooter, of course, on these mountain hilly roads, you're actually going around all these corners, and you could go at high speed around the corners. You could actually have that experience on a scooter. You don't actually have to ride on the sled to have that. You can just rent a scooter and go zooming around all these curvy mountain roads. But yeah, there is something different about being like sitting in a sled and then controlling it with your brakes. The other thing that I figured out pretty quickly is that the whole thing is computerized as well. So when I went through the curves, I wanted the sled to go as fast as possible. So I just pushed the bars all the way to the front. And that's kind of a manly thing to do as well. I've seen YouTube videos about parks like this all around the world, and there will be people waiting in line, boyfriend, girlfriend, brothers, sisters, husband, wife, whoever, and they're all joking and laughing, and then the guy will always say, well, I don't want any of you guys to slow me down. I'm going to just go as fast as, I'm not going to touch the brakes the whole way to the bottom. And then they get into the sled, and of course, at the very first curve, instincts take over. You feel like you're going too fast, and the guy ends up braking anyway, and everybody teases him. Oh, yeah. You said you were so tough, and you weren't afraid. You were not going to use the brakes, but you did. But anyway, when I started going down, I had that thought process going on, because I know logically the way this thing is built, there's no way you can go too fast. They're not going to design it where anybody can go too fast and go flying off the tracks. So it's only logical that the whole thing was engineered carefully and designed that you could just release it 100%, apply no brake at all, and you're going to be able to go around all the corners. And you're going to be thrown hard from side to side, and you're going to really feel the G-forces, but you're not going to be in any danger. So you don't have to be afraid of going fast the way the system is engineered would have taken that into account. So I just pushed it all the way forward and went. Didn't touch the brakes at all. But then suddenly I was braking. Like, what the heck? I'm not braking, because they have a computerized system. And what they're worried about is not you flying off the tracks, but they're worried about you slamming into the back of somebody else if someone ahead of you is stopped on the tracks, and then you come around the curve at maximum speed and you may not be able to stop in time, and then you hit them or something. So they have a system in place, computers, that actually slow you down for you. So that's kind of funny. So yeah, I pushed them all the way to the front and said, let's go. And then, why am I slowing down? I was like, oh, for Pete's sake, the whole thing is being controlled by AI. AI is trying to keep me safe. So yeah, so we did that. And yeah, Daryl and I went out to a whole bunch of places, a bunch of restaurants, had some great food, went to the night market. Yeah, I had a really good time. And that kind of ties in with what I was talking about earlier about the advantages of having two people, just having an experience together when you're shooting video rather than being by yourself all the time. It introduces a certain level of fun, a level of energy and laughter and just goofing around that you don't have when you're on your own. So yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. But then Daryl, eventually, he was gone. We woke up in the morning at the P&P hotel, and he got Banh Mi sandwiches. I didn't know that. I was in my room and I was working on a video or something. And then I got a message from Daryl, and he said, yeah, Banh Mi is here. He had it ordered by Grab. So I went over to his room, and since we were going to be sitting there having Banh Mi, I brought along my GoPro and I set it up and actually filmed us just talking about the experiences in Dalat that we had, just sort of setting the stage for the day. Daryl shot a video at the same time. He did kind of a wind up of his experiences in Dalat with me on camera. And then after that, yeah, his van came to pick him up, a small van. And then he got in the small van and it took him to a bigger bus, and then that bus took him back to Saigon. And I was here on my own, and that's when I moved into this hotel, which is a much more simple place than where we were staying. This Hotel Rosa Dalat, something like that. And I booked this room for 5 nights. And that day turned out to be a pretty busy one for me, and that kind of led to my video memory troubles as well, or as part of my memory problems, because I shot video while we were having Banh Mi. I shot video saying goodbye to Daryl as he got on the bus and left. I shot video of me packing up from the P&P boutique hotel and then walking here to this hotel, checking into my room here. And then I shot video about having lunch at a local place in my neighborhood, video of me walking around my neighborhood, getting to know it. Then video in the late afternoon, walking to the lake here and having lots of small adventures. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people out having a good time. Now, Dalat is a very busy city at night in particular. And then I went to the night market, did sort of a 5-snack challenge, shot lots of video at the night market. And by the end of the day, this is one day, only one day, I had 160 gigabytes of video just from that day. And then I somehow had to find room for it because I'm not ready to edit that video yet. I got to store it, and I need 2 copies of it at least, because you can't have just one copy of anything. You got to have a backup. So I basically had to copy 320 gigabytes of video from multiple sources in multiple formats and audio files and photographs and on, and then make room for it all. That was a that was a job and a half, I can tell you. And it was probably all 4K video. That's why. So that was quite something. So that day, yeah, that was a big adventure that day. I went to the night market. I really wanted to do that. The next day was Sunday, and I didn't do much on Sunday. A lot of video editing, a lot of housekeeping, a lot of hanging out here at the hotel. And then on Monday, yesterday, I wanted to buy a memory card and I turned that into a walk out into the city. I was really just going to walk to the computer store, buy a memory card, and walk back. And it was going to be a behind the scenes video, just me running errands. But I found what I was seeing around me in Dalat so interesting that I started taking more and more and more video of all the buildings and the hotels and the fish markets and streets and everything here in Dalat. And it turned into a long, normal Planet Doug style video of just walking around and exploring Dalat. It's a beautiful place. Love it here. And you can walk forever because it's not hot. Being at 1,500 meters, it's nice and cool up here. So you can just walk and walk and walk and enjoy yourself, and you don't end up hot and sweaty and exhausted. I stopped off at one place for a snack. I think that was called Ban Khan. I was just walking by a little shop and I saw this guy with a kettle and a set of clay bowls with clay lids, and he was pouring batter into all of these clay bowls, and then he was adding a whole variety of toppings: mushroom, ground beef, and what else? Chicken intestines, I think he said, and shrimp, and then egg, diced onion, all kinds of things. And then he would put these little clay lids on top of all of them and bake them, cook them. And these were called Ban Khan. And I had a really funny experience there because I wanted to take video of it, which I did, and then I wanted to try some. So I took video of the guy making these, and then I indicated to him, okay, I'm going to go inside now, sit at a table, and I'd like to try some of these. And they had a menu there, but I couldn't really figure out how the menu worked. That's always the issue for me with restaurants or cafes or anything to do with food, because the first time you go in anywhere, you don't know. You don't know how to order. Another story about that in a minute. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the menu, and then I took out my phone and I turned on Google Translate with the camera feature, and then I'm just reading the sign and I'm trying to figure out, oh, okay, that's the egg one, that's the beef one. And I wasn't interested in the shrimp because I'm not a big shrimp guy, or prawns, whatever they were. And then when the guy came over to take my order, I was just going to have a few of them. So I was looking at these ones on the menu, and I thought this one, okay, this one's the chicken or the beef one. Can I have 2 of these? This is the plain egg one. Could I have 3 of those? And they seemed expensive to me, to be honest, because it said like 45,000 dong, 55,000 dong, 40,000 dong, like that. And I thought, wow, 40,000 dong each. That's a gourmet level snack. But I thought, okay, that's what they cost. I'll try a few. And then I was trying to order 2 of these, 3 of these, 1 of these, 2 of these. And then the guy looked at me and he's like, no. And he started rubbing his stomach and making pained looks on his face, like, oh. So maybe I was thinking, you're trying to interpret from your own context, your own cultural point of view, what the other person is trying to communicate using sign language. Because he didn't speak English and I don't speak Vietnamese. We hadn't gotten to the Google Translate part yet. We were just doing sign language. And I'm thinking from my point of view that, okay, some of these are a bit challenging for me, like the chicken intestines or the shrimp or this or that. And I just assumed he was telling me, ooh, you're ordering some really weird things here, and we don't think you as a foreigner can handle them. And that's how I was interpreting it, because that's what I thought. I thought that was how he viewed me, right? As a foreigner, I can't handle the crazy local food. And maybe when I was pointing at the menu, I was pointing at some very exotic things that I didn't understand. And he was saying, no, that they'll make you sick. So I thought, okay. And so then I changed course, and I'm trying to get information from him about, okay, which ones are the weird ones that you don't want me to order? And they had a big sign there, like a photograph. So I thought, I can just use this. And I was pointing at the plain egg ones. Okay, this one and the beef one, okay, ground meat, that looks pretty safe. This one, and I thought, okay, give me 2 of these and 4 of these. And then he didn't like that either. And he's like, no, oh, no, that's not right. That's not right. And I'm like, wait, what is it? We're not picking up on what the other person is laying down here. I didn't understand him. He wasn't understanding me. And then we got out Google Translate. I did. And I opened it up and I showed it to him. And I said, like, can you just type out what you're trying to say in Vietnamese? And he typed something out. And it made no sense in English. There was something about 1/10 pieces and then some other words. But the whole thing didn't make any sense. I'm looking at it going, sorry, that's not helping me out at all. And then he called over another customer who he asked him, I think, do you speak any English? Can you help us communicate? And then this guy came up and talked to me, and I can't remember exactly what he said anymore, like what words he used. He said something in English, but something that he said set off the light bulb, or the penny dropped, or the other shoe dropped, and it was like, oh, I get it. The problem was that they serve them 10 at a time. So 45,000 dong gets you 10. That's what the menu was. The price was per set of 10. I thought it was per snack, but it's actually per 10 snacks. So when I said to him, okay, I want 2 of these, and 3 of these, I was ordering 2, 4, 7. I was ordering 70 of them, like 7 sets of 10. And then he was saying, it's like, no, he was rubbing his stomach, indicating being full. It's like, oh, no, you can't eat that many. You want 70? No, that's not right. You're only one person. You can't eat 70. So it's like, now I get it. So then I went back and I says, okay, the egg, 1. But 1 means 10. And the ground meat, 1, which means 10. So then I was going to get 10 of the egg, 10 of the ground meat. And even that is too much, because I think a set of 10 would be for one person. If you got 2 sets, it would be for you and a friend. Like if you're there with like 4 or 5 people, maybe you would order 20 total and you all have a couple of them. But so even for me, ordering 20 in total was a lot for one person. But that's what I ordered, and then they came, and all kinds of other stuff I had to figure out, because the first ones that came were the ground meat ones. They came, and then it came as a set of 10. And to be honest, right up until that point, I still didn't really know for sure that I understood what was going on. And when it finally came, a plate with 10 of them, I went, all right, okay, now everything makes sense. Now I get it. I can come back here, and now I know how to order and what to do. But I was still wrong, because I got the 10 of them, and then he brought me a bowl of soup. It was a bowl of soup with a huge meatball in the middle. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good deal. I think the ground beef one was 55,000 dong, but you got 10 of these relatively big snacks and a big bowl of soup with a big meatball in it. And I thought, that's actually not a bad deal. So I got out a spoon, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll eat the soup first. And I have a spoon of soup, and it's like, it's kind of weird soup, but that's all right. And then I had one of these ground beef ban kan, or whatever it's called, and I had one of those, and I had another one. And my honest opinion was, it really wasn't anything special, because it had no flavor. It was essentially rice, like ground rice flour. They made a batter out of ground rice flour and eggs, and then they added some other eggs and then some ground meat, but it didn't really have any flavor. And I was kind of surprised about that. I don't mind that. I like bland food, but I thought there's no way a Vietnamese person would be happy with this food. So I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what to say about it. I had a GoPro running, and I started talking a little bit into the camera about, there there isn't a lot going on here. And they had a bottle of like hot chili sauce on the table. And I thought, well, maybe you're supposed to pour this chili sauce all over it. It's like, the thing had no flavor. So there I am eating these things. And then the young guy who had been serving me, he came over, he saw, I guess, I didn't see him notice me struggling, but I guess he watched me and he saw that I was doing everything wrong. And he came over to me and he indicated again with sign language, like, no. You take the banh can and you dip it. That's the dipping sauce. It's not soup, it's dipping sauce for the snack. And I thought, now I get it. So I take one of those things, I dip it into the dipping sauce, take a bite. That is good. This is an amazing dish. I love this, but you gotta dip. You gotta dip. And anyway, it took me so long to get there. And then I'm busy dipping and enjoying it. And I used the spoon, because it was a lot. It was a big bowl, so there's no way I could even use up all of the dipping sauce, because I was eating it like soup at the same time. And it had a pretty strong flavor as a soup, because it wasn't meant to be a soup, it was meant to be a dipping sauce. And then after I'd figured all this out, a second plate came. At this point, to be honest, I thought I had only ordered one. I tried to order 10 egg, 10 ground meat, but I only got the ground meat. And I thought, okay, well, I only got 10, and I was happy with that because I realized how big it was. But after I made that conclusion, then I got another 10. He just hadn't made the egg ones yet. So then he made the egg ones and then brought another 10 to my table. So now I had 10 more to get through, and the extra came with a second dipping bowl. So now basically I had enough food there for an army, and it was just me. And then I slowly worked my way through all 20 of them, and I ate and drank both entire bowls. So I left nothing behind. And by the time I was done, it was a lot of flavor. So with the dipping sauce, as I said, the way it was flavored was just enough that you dip something into it. And it's like, oh man, that's really, really good. It wasn't designed for you to take the whole bowl and then drink it when the meal was over, but that's what I did. I thought it was still pretty tasty, so I ate the meatballs, and then I started spooning it up, and then I slurped down both entire bowls. I finished them all. But that was an interesting experience, and it kind of illustrates what happens all the time, for me anyway. The first time you go anywhere to order something, it's a bit, I wouldn't call it an ordeal, but it is an effort. And sometimes you're not really in the mood for it. So sometimes if I go through this whole process at a certain restaurant and I know how that restaurant works, I'm quite likely to go back to that same restaurant and have the exact same meal, because I can't face going through this big, long, confusing effort every time I want to have a meal. So like if you ate 3 meals a day and you wanted to try a different meal every time, you would be exhausted. At some point, you just have to go back to your favorites and go back to the restaurant where everybody knows your name and you know how things work, and you don't have to work quite so hard to get a meal. And speaking of food and Dalat, and Vietnam in general, this continues to be my favorite snack. This is my favorite discovery. When I was down in Saigon, going into places like 7-Eleven, Circle K, and GS25, I discovered these yogurts. And they're really good, really tasty, and really good value. Down in Saigon, I think they were like 10,000 dong each for one of these cups of yogurt, and I thought that was pretty good value for what you get. So if I just I'm feeling like I want a snack, and it became a no-brainer just to pop into 7-Eleven and grab a couple of these. Much better value than any other sort of snack you can get. But that's also a little bit of the whole Google Translate and figuring things out, because I went in there one time and I grabbed these yogurts, and they were really good. As you can see here, it says in English, sweetened yogurt. That was the first one I had. And then I went back in there and I grabbed some more and I brought them back to my room, and they were plain yogurt. So they're actually quite sour, very strong sort of flavor, which I was happy with too. But I didn't mind having the sweetened. But then what you have to do when you go into these stores, because like this one says sweetened yogurt on it, but this one doesn't. So when they're all split apart, sometimes it has English on it, sometimes not. And then you have to look at the Vietnamese to try to figure out what it is you're getting. And here it says something like Co Duong. And then on the other one, it's like Kua Duong. And I know one of them is have sugar, and the other one means no sugar. And then I'm constantly in stores. I just have my phone open all the time. So I've got Google Translate here, and it says Ko Duong there, and I've got to aim it at that, and it says no sugar. It's like, so Ko Duong, that means no sugar, or have sugar. That's right, I'm getting all mixed up already. Ko Duong means have sugar. And I try to remember that. Okay, remember which is which. And then the next time I go into 7-Eleven, I'm faced with this array of yogurts, and I forget again. Okay, which is which again? I got to get Google Translate out. I'm like, okay, have sugar, no, and one is aloe vera flavored, one is this, one is that. But anyway, you do a whole lot of translating all the time. But something I've noticed is in Dalat, things are significantly cheaper here than in Saigon. Everybody says that. So everywhere you go, if you're talking to anybody about being in Saigon and being in this new place, guaranteed they're going to say, oh, Saigon, so expensive, so expensive. That's just sort of a talking point of Vietnam. And even I have noticed it. So for example, these yogurts in Vietnam, like I said, were like 10, 11,000. And I just bought 4 of them at a local shop here, and I looked at the receipt afterwards, and these are 6,500 dong. So that's a big drop in price from, let's say, 10,000 to 6,500. And that's kind of what you're looking at between Saigon and Dalat. And I see that price drop everywhere. If you get a Coke, a beer, a bowl of pho, Banh Mi, everything is that percentage cheaper here in Dalat than in Saigon. So that's interesting. I have a fridge here in my room. It's a little bit of a troublesome fridge. I don't know what it is about that fridge, but it builds up frost like unbelievably fast. When I moved into this room, it was unplugged, and the tray underneath the freezer part was just filled right to the brim with water. The whole fridge was filled with water. The room was kind of flooded because within a very short time, the freezer fills with frost, and then when someone checks out of the room, they always unplug the freezer, and then all of it melts. So anyway, moving into the room, I'm plugging in the fridge, and I'm trying to put things in there to get cold bottles of water and things. And then you've got that tray, and you know how those wide trays are impossible to keep level without creating a tsunami that slops over the side. So of course, I'm trying to hold it as steady as possible, as level as possible, pulling it out from the fridge, and then I'm trying to move carefully over to the bathroom. And of course, water is just going everywhere. There's nothing you can do. But now it's flooding the entire floor. But yeah, bit of a mess over there. But I thought I would have some of my have sugar yogurt. Yeah, the fridge, the door doesn't close properly either, so things in there don't really get very cold. Oh, it's so good. Such a value. 6,500 dong for this yogurt. That is such a bargain. Which brings me to my next food story, because I had lunch today. I don't know why I'm so hungry right now, because I just had lunch, but as I'm eating this, I'm like, oh man, why am I so hungry? Because I did have lunch, and I've been to this restaurant 3 times already. And it is a Com Tam restaurant, which means broken rice. And I feel like I've talked about this already as well. I hope I'm not repeating myself too much. But when I was in Saigon, I was walking down the street one day, and I happened to see this little food stall, and the guy had a barbecue with like pork chops on it, and they were selling rice and pork chops with a bunch of veggies. And I thought, now that's a meal I understand. We're not going to have any problems communicating about that. So I just went up to this place and just said, I will have one of whatever you guys are putting together. And that was my introduction to what they call broken rice. And I guess the idea is that the broken rice is the leftover rice after you harvest and you clean the rice, and you've got all the big, perfectly formed grains of rice that you separate, put in bags, and sell to go to the market or for export, whatever. And then there might be a bunch of remnants on the ground, little bits and pieces of rice, the broken grains, the broken kernels. Sweep all of that up, and that would be the cheaper broken rice. And I guess that turned into a local delicacy in a way. And now broken rice means you get this rice with a special kind of onion, chopped green onion sauce. And you get a pork chop and an omelet, a square omelet, and then some vegetables and different things like that. And that's called broken rice. So I understand this meal. I know what it is. I like it. It's easy on the system, easy to digest. So when I saw that there was a very popular Com Tam restaurant right around the corner from this hotel, I was very happy. And on my very first day, I went there to have lunch. But as with all restaurants, now I had to figure out how it worked. And this is never a simple process because everything is always different. I do have this sense that you could travel from one end of Canada to the other, you could do like a 4-month trip, eat 3 meals a day in 3 different restaurants for the entire 4 months, and the ordering and payment and serving process would be the same the entire time. You sit down at the table, the server comes to your table, you look at the menu, you order, they go away, they bring it, then they come clear the table, and then at some point they bring you the bill, and then you pay them, or you go to the cash register and pay. It always is exactly the same, but of course in a country like Vietnam, you have no idea. It's always something different. It's a new system, it's a new procedure, and you have to figure out how it works. So there I am in this Com Tam place, and I didn't know where to start. I honestly had no idea, and man, was this place busy. It's big, and it was clearly designed to cater to tour groups. So they have these long series of tables, and they have a system in place, I guess, where a tour bus could show up at any point. 40 people can get out of that bus, boom, sit down at one long table, and they have to be able to serve 40 meals instantly, boom, 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 and get them out the door. And if you go there at a certain time of day, every table is full, buses galore everywhere. But if you time things properly, I guess when I happened to go there, it was around maybe 11:30 in the morning, 11 in the morning, because I just moved into this hotel. Still pretty early in the day, so it wasn't as busy as it normally would be, as busy as I saw it later on. And so I go in there and I'm like, well, okay, now what exactly do I do? And I didn't know. So I kind of went up to the cash register. They had a big menu behind the cash register, and there was a woman there, and I saw people doing things there, paying for things, and I thought, okay, let me just go stand over there for a while, and if that's what's supposed to happen, it will happen. The woman behind the cash register will look up at me and indicate, what would you like? Point at the menu. The Vietnamese are very good about this sort of thing. They're very logical, and they apply common sense to everything. A feature in the Vietnamese character that I admire very much. But then I stood there for a long time, and it wasn't as busy, as I said, as it normally is, but it was still pretty chaotic. I think they must have had a bus load or two just arrive and leave, because some bus boys had come out. And these bus boys were not messing around. They had big tubs. And when they were clearing the tables, it didn't matter to them how much noise they made. The point was to clear the tables. And it was almost like putting the big plastic bucket at one end of the table, extending an arm and just like sweeping everything off the table into the bucket, piling things, slamming them down. And people were running back and forth, going fast, 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 fast. This place was all about speed and efficiency, getting things done fast. So I was standing there in front of the cash register, and I felt like I was in the eye of the storm. There was a storm raging around me, activity and everything going on. And I tried to indicate with my body language that I'm there to place my order. So I'm open to anybody. I'm trying to make eye contact. And nothing happened. People just went about their business, just going, going, going. Things were happening all around me. But at no point was it obvious that I could place an order there. So I thought, okay, let's go sit at a table for a while and see what happens. So then I went to a table, got myself all settled, and I grabbed, some tables had a menu available that you could pick up and look at. So I looked at the menu, and I did the whole Google Translate thing on the menu, figured out what it was I would want to order, which one of the items, and then I just put the menu aside. Sort of the universal restaurant language. I tried to look like a man who was ready to order. You go from the guy who's looking at the menu, and now you put the menu down and you put it far away from you to indicate, okay, I'm done with that. Now I'm ready. And then you just sort of look around and you're making eye contact and you're just opening yourself up to show that, okay, I'm ready to order now. And I waited for quite a long time. I waited and waited. I had my tablet set up. I was going to watch a TV show over lunch. I was chatting with friends over WhatsApp, sending messages, taking pictures, sending them. But nobody came. Like nobody came to my table. So I thought, okay, going to the cash register didn't work. Sitting at a table didn't work. What exactly am I supposed to do here? So the only option I had was to go back to the cash register. There wasn't a third, so I thought, well, let's try that again. So I had to pack everything up. I couldn't leave everything there at the table, so I basically just packed up and started all over again. And I had my knapsack, and I went up to the cash register again, and then I stood there, sort of waiting to be acknowledged. And then a server came up to me, I think from the side, or maybe it was the cash register woman, I'm not sure. But at that point, someone finally acknowledged me and was like, like you want something. And then I fumbled through this procedure of placing an order and then sitting down somewhere. And they gave me this little plastic pyramid or little sign, very small one. You know, if you do that at McDonald's and you choose table service, you get a number, but it's this big. It's easily visible from across the room. At this restaurant, it was about this big, and it was clear plastic with white numbers on it. It was very hard to see. And I was like putting it down on the table in front of me. I said, man, this is way too small. Nobody's going to be able to see this when my order is ready. So I'm sort of like moving it around, and should I put it on a stick and hold it up in the air just so someone can see it? So that was my first experience. I didn't know how to pay either. Was I supposed to signal a waiter or something? But I had this little thing with a number on it. So then I picked it up when my meal was over, and I went back to the cash register and sort of handed them my little number thing. And they kind of looked at me like, what are you doing? And then a server came with some kind of a special phone, and then they took their phone and looked at my number and entered my number into their phone. And I guess that communicated with the cash register, and then I was able to pay. It was all very confusing, very complicated. And that was the first time I went there. And then I went there again the second time. And then the second time I tried to repeat it because it seemed to me, okay, that's how you order. You go to the cash register first, because that's how I ordered. I finally got food the first time. So I thought, okay, I got that figured out. So I went in and I marched right up to the cash register, intending to place my order like the first time. And then she kind of looked at me and was like, no, no. And then called over a server, and a server came up to me and said, no, 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 no. And brought me over to a table and indicated, no, 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 what you do is you sit here and we will come to you. That's how the system works. I thought, okay, I'm happy with that, but it didn't work the first time. So I thought, okay, I get it wrong every single time. And then this time I sat there, and then the woman took out her magic little device, and I pointed at the same meal that I had last time, and then she entered it in, and then she put one of the number things on the table. So that's how the system really works. You go in, sit down, wait, they come to you, take your order, assign it a number, and then they put one of these plastic numbers on your table, and then your food is delivered. Payment is still a mystery, though, because I went back there a third time today. Today was my third time, and I did it very well this time, though it worked a little bit differently because I walked right in, and then a server saw me coming in, and then I didn't even have to sit down. They came up to me right away and then said, oh, how many people? And I said, one. Okay, one. And they brought me to a table and seated me. So this time I didn't even choose a seat. They seated me because I was a group of one, and you don't want to occupy a giant table because they might have a busload of 40 arrive, and you can't be sitting in the middle of a banquet table, right? They take us lonely single people and put us off in the corner where we're not going to bother anybody. So that's how the system worked this time, and I got my little plastic thing. But then every time I've picked up the plastic thing and brought it to the cash register thinking that's how you pay, I get intercepted by a server on the way. And now I'm thinking, oh, so am I supposed to just sit at my table and wave down a server to come to pay? Because I can never remember which server is mine. There are so many of them there, and they're moving so fast. They're so busy. So I'll go back there again, I'm sure. And by the time I eat there like 10 times, I'll finally have the system figured out. And they will know me by then, of course. So they will recognize me, and then the whole system gets smoothed over. But the first time and the second time and the third time you go, you have to work out all of these details and figure it out. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. So, yeah. Yeah, I also had banh mi in this neighborhood. And of course, when I was in Saigon, I found my preferred banh mi person. And I went back to the same person all the time because I liked their banh mi. And then I worked out the system, how you order, how you pay, the order in which they like to do things. And then when I was in Canton, I had to find a new banh mi place, and they had an entirely different system that I had to figure out. And you have to figure out how much it costs because they didn't have prices posted. You got to ask questions about that, what they make here, what type of banh mi, how you order, how you pay, all that. You get that finally figured out. And then here in my new neighborhood, I had to find a new banh mi place. And I've only had it one time. I'll probably go back there. Though that place didn't really jump out at me as like, oh, I like this place. So even though I made some progress in terms of figuring out the ordering system, I may have to try a different one and go through the whole rigmarole again because, I don't know, I haven't found any banh mi as good as the ones I had in Saigon. They were big and heavy and filling with tons of vegetables and stuff. And I remember walking away from these places. The banh mi was very good price, $22,000 for the chicken, $17,000 for the omelet one with a big fried egg. Not really an omelet, but they call it omelet, but it's just a fried egg one. And then when you pay for them and they hand them to you in a bag, it's got heft. It's like, that's good. You walk away feeling good about your sandwich. You can feel the weight of them, and they're big and filling. And then every other banh mi I've had since then, all the other ones, I had them at the bus station in Saigon, I had them in Canton, I've had them here. All of them are just like these lightweight little flimsy things. They're not nearly as big and substantial as the ones I had in Saigon at this one place. So actually two places, they were similar. And maybe it's because these ones are right in the middle of District 1, and maybe They've learned that Westerners, we like our sandwiches that way, and that's how they make them. And then the more traditional banh mi is a smaller, not croissant, a smaller, what's the name of the bread? I can't even think of it right now. My brain is not working. The French bread. I'll think of it. But all the ones I've had elsewhere are smaller, lighter, and they don't put nearly as much filling inside, ingredients. It's always, I had 2 of them last night, and I brought them here, and they were so lightweight. I thought if I sneezed, I'd blow them across the room, and I ate them both, and I was like, it didn't really fill me up. I miss my big, beefy ones from Saigon. So maybe I just have to order 4 of them in order to get the same amount. So, adventures with ordering food. I guess I'll continue with that topic. I was going to talk about some trips that I took in Saigon a long time ago, but I think I'll set that aside for now. I'll do the next BTS video. I'll talk about, I went to Cholun, as I said, with a local YouTuber, and that's Chinatown in Saigon, and I went to the Kuchi tunnels. I intended to tell those stories today, but I think, no, I think I'll do that next time. I'll finish up this behind the scenes with these stories from Dalat. They feel more current, perhaps, a little bit more interesting for me because they're happening right now. Because I went to the night market the day that Daryl left. Well, Daryl and I went to the night market on a Thursday night, but then I learned that the night market is totally closed to vehicles on Saturday and Sunday night. So I wanted to go back on a Saturday night, see it when it's completely closed to vehicles of any kind, and I assumed it'd be a lot busier on a Saturday night, right? So I went there on Saturday night as well. I was by myself at that time, shooting video with my GoPro, and I didn't announce the experience as a 5-snack challenge, but it kind of evolved into one as time went on. And I have been talking about this confusion of the ordering system in these restaurants, but it's not because they're badly organized. It's just that there are a variety of systems, and every restaurant seems to have a different one, and I have to figure out what it is. And once you know what it is, everything is fine. Because overall, as I said, I find the Vietnamese people to be very logical and very capable of using common sense. They're very practical people. They don't freak out when I show up as a foreigner, and I really like that. And they make smart decisions. So you're not fumbling around for a long time trying to figure out what's going on. So I went into the night market, and then the very first thing I wanted to have was the Vietnamese pizza. It's more like a Vietnamese taco, to be honest. But when you see it being prepared, it's like a rice paper disc being cooked on a barbecue grill, and then they just lay out a whole bunch of toppings, and it looks essentially like a small pizza. But then when you order it, they take it, they heat it up again, or they cook it, and then they fold it into thirds, put it into a paper wrapper, and then you eat it that way. They don't serve it flat like a pizza, and they certainly don't cut it into slices. It's not a real pizza. Everyone calls it Vietnamese pizza, but it's more like a Vietnamese taco, perhaps, or burrito shell or something like that. So that was the main thing I wanted when I went to the night market. And I walked into the market, and right on my right-hand side, right at the beginning, there was a man making and selling them. And it felt a little bit too early. It was like you kind of want to get into the market, spend some time there, find the best one. But I thought, right there, I'll just do it right here. And the other thing about this market, I was going to say the good thing is this ease of ordering, but the other good thing is that this market has a lot more space than normal night markets do. So even this guy, very small, one-man operation selling these Vietnamese pizzas, he had behind him plastic stools and plastic tables. It was like, oh, this is going to be so amazing. And that's one reason I decided to have my Vietnamese pizza there, because there was a place I could sit down and eat it. So I went up to the guy, and he looked up at me, and then I just said, one. And he said to me, one. Okay. And I indicated the table, and he said, with body language, absolutely, go have a seat. And that was it. It was just so easy. We didn't get lost in this morass of miscommunication and him speaking endlessly in Vietnamese, and I can't understand what he's saying. He looks up at me, oh, foreigner, doesn't speak Vietnamese, so why should I speak Vietnamese? We'll just use sign language. And then he just said, one, okay, have a seat. And then he just hands it to me, and we're done. Then at the end, when I'm ready to pay, he looks up at me. He knows there's an order to these things. You order, you sit down, you eat, then you pay, then you leave. So he saw I had eaten. I was getting ready to get up and leave. So it's not like it's a mystery about what I want to do next. He makes the common sense leap of logic. Oh, now he is going to pay. So he looks at me and he says in English, 25,000. Oh, thank you very much. I get 25,000 and I give it to him. It's just, maybe it seems ridiculous that I'm pointing this out, but I've traveled to a few countries in my life, and this sort of common sense approach to the practical things is not as common as you would think. It doesn't happen a lot. There's usually chaos and confusion, and I often don't see any need for the chaos and confusion. Sure, there's a language barrier, but we do have logic and sign language, and these days we have Google Translate. It shouldn't be that hard to get through this transaction, but in a lot of countries it is. We seem to run into these barriers of logic where I don't really know what they're doing or what they're thinking, and they obviously can't figure out what I'm doing or thinking. But here in Vietnam, we just seem to be in sync. I mean, I walked up to his food cooker, right? So the obvious conclusion is I want to order his food. That's our starting point. But in so many other countries, we couldn't even get that far. Like I would walk into a hotel in some other countries that I won't name, and then the people would look at me like, what do you want? And I'm always thinking, well, what do you think I want? I'm a tourist. I walked into a hotel. Obviously, I'm interested in a hotel room. We should be able to make that assumption. I'm not going to walk into a hotel and ask for an oil change for my scooter, right? It's like, surely we don't have to fight this hard to communicate, but in so many countries we do. Again, where I'll walk into someplace where they're making, say, whatever, just pick something, fried rice, and I walk up to the guy and I'm standing there and he'll look at me like, what do you want? I'm like, well, fried rice. Why do you think I need what I want? Anyway, I run into those problems a lot, but here in Vietnam, everybody just seems to understand basic common sense, and I really like that. I walked up to the guy, and he's selling Vietnamese pizzas, so obviously I must want a Vietnamese pizza, and all we need to decide is how many I want. So I'm standing there, and he looks up, oh, and I say, one? Oh, one, okay, have a seat. It isn't such a struggle, and I really appreciate that. And all through the market, it was like that. I had all kinds of adventures. I ended up having 6 or 7 different snacks by the end of it. And there was a couple of points where language barrier, things like that, there was some confusion, but nothing major. And there were things going on that I couldn't understand, and that made for an interesting story. And of course, me being me, I generally introduce an element of confusion that isn't really necessary. But at one point, walking through the night market, I'm looking for my next snack, and I saw this stall, and on the outside of it, they had these cups, looked like yogurt, and maybe yogurt with some red beans on the top or something, and that's what caught my eye. So I went over there to order that. But then when I got there, I saw that they had a big metal pot of something cooking, and a woman was getting her order, and the server took out a big plastic takeaway, transparent takeaway bowl, got a ladle, and she ladled out this soup/stew that looked amazing. It looked so good. I instantly changed my mind. It's like, oh man, that is what I want. What is that? I want that, whatever that is. I made up my mind so quickly. And she kept ladling out this stuff. And I don't know how to describe it. The texture of the soup, it wasn't liquidy. It was like long and thready, like egg drop soup, if that makes any sense. The broth was like gooey almost, and it was filled with mushrooms, like mushrooms and all kinds of veggies and green onions and things. And she would fill the whole thing. And then right beside the big pot, there were all these containers, open containers, maybe 5 of them. And she would go the whole length of the containers and just take a big scoop of each one, a scoop of this, a scoop of that, 1 of those, 2 of those, some of those, some of those. And by the time she was done, man, did it look good. And I thought, okay, that's my next snack. Then I did make things a little bit confusing because there were a couple of things in the containers that I wasn't interested in. It looks like the typical soup included some of everything. And as I found out later, to jump ahead in the story, this was crab soup. That's what it was. The sign said crab soup in Vietnamese, and this was crab soup. So in one of the containers, I think there were small crabs that, to me, I looked into that container and I didn't know what they were. They didn't have all the legs and the arms and the pincers. It was like these weird half crescent moon shaped things that were like dark black and red or something. And I didn't know what those were, and I didn't trust them. So I didn't want that, but I think that was the crab. And I'm ordering crab soup, but without the crab. So there was a little bit of confusion about that. And one of the things was one big shrimp. So everything else, there was like minced meat and all kinds of veggies and egg, small eggs going in there as well. And then again, logic came into play because I did indicate to the woman, that is what I'd like in sign language. I just had to sort of gesture towards the bowl or the big pot, and that I would like that. And then she needed to know takeaway or eat here. And in many other countries, they would do this with language. Even though they know full well I can't speak their language, they would say to me in their language, oh, is that for takeaway or to eat here? And I would know what they said, and they would repeat it, and I would know what they said, and they would repeat it, and we would just be stuck. But this woman looks at me, oh, dumb foreigner. Obviously, he doesn't speak Vietnamese. So being a very practical person and being very logical, applying common sense, she picked up a eat-in bowl and a takeaway bowl and showed them to me. Which one? So logical, just dripping with common sense. I was so happy I've been happy in Vietnam the whole time I've been here, partially because of that application of common sense. I see it everywhere, and I admire it so much. Takeaway or eat in? She made the logical leap that's how we can communicate this question and answer. And I pointed to the eat in. I would like to eat here. And then the customer service kicks into play as well. Vietnam has amazing customer service because there wasn't really anywhere convenient for me to sit and eat. There were a couple of plastic stools, but no tables. There were a couple of tables, but they were completely full. And then way off on the left, there was a big stack of tables that were all piled on top of each other. So anyway, I indicated to the woman, I would like to eat in, I'd like to sit here. And she looked over in that direction and she instantly saw, oh, problem, no table. So then she went and got one of the tables and put it there beside the stool for me. Again, seems like an obvious thing to do, a very simple thing to do, but it isn't obvious in many other countries that I've been to. And that level of customer service that she would do that for me. And when we went through all the ingredients, I said no to the crab. I think that was crab. And I said, no, I don't think I want that. And I said no to the shrimp. And I think the shrimp and the crab are the main reason Vietnamese people would want this dish. It's crab soup, and everybody loves shrimp or prawn or whatever they are. So basically, I'm It's like I'm ordering this amazing meal, but I'm asking them to leave out all the ingredients that make it amazing in their eyes. So she kind of looked, it's like, really? You don't want that or that? And then she made up for it by giving me like 5 times more eggs than normal. So, okay, well, you're not going to have the shrimp or the crab, but okay, you do like eggs, right? And I said, yeah, I love the eggs. And then I think she was only supposed to put 1 in there, but she had these little tongs, and she was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She just filled the bowl with eggs, which I love that too. So anyway, I'm settled in there. I have my little plastic stool, my little plastic table, and I'm enjoying this soup, which was so good. I was just like in heaven, because a lot of the snacks I was having were snacks, desserty things, fried things, yogurts. I'll get back to my second favorite one in a minute. And as delicious as they all are, I hadn't actually had dinner, so I hadn't had any actual food, but this crab soup was very hearty and hot and delicious, and it felt like a meal. So I really, really enjoyed that. But anyway, I'm sitting there on the stool with my little plastic table, and I'm enjoying it, and I noticed all this activity all around me, all these people, and the food sellers, I mean. And then my food seller, this young woman, started packing up her cart on wheels. Like it was plugged into electricity, had all kinds of connections and things. And she's packing everything up, unplugging everything. And it looks like she's going away. And there was such a frantic movement going on around me. I thought we were dealing with like a police problem, that the police were coming and maybe they didn't have permission to be set up here. And now, someone warned them. I heard whistles blowing, and I thought maybe they were warned, oh, the police are coming, and they're all running away. And then when the police go by, then they're all going to come back again. That's what I thought maybe. But then she rolled her cart and just sort of disappeared. I didn't know where she went. I'm sitting there eating my soup, and I thought, well, I'm here all by myself. I have no idea what's going on. And I didn't know how I was going to pay. How am I going to find this woman? How am I going to give her back her bowl? So this was confusing as well. But then after a while, she came back and indicated to me in sign language, come. We moved to a new location, and she wanted me to pick up all my stuff and go to this new location. And she helped me because I had a GoPro set up on a tripod. I had my knapsack on the floor. I had the soup. It was going to take me 2 or 3 trips to bring everything, and then she pitched in and helped. And she moved the soup, basically. So I picked up all of my stuff, and then she grabbed the soup and then walked me across the road. We were at a roundabout, and we were at the very top of the roundabout, and then we walked kind of around, and we found her food cart, and all these new stools and tables were laid out there. And she put my soup on one of those tables and said, okay, this is your new spot. And why they were there before and they moved. And I think when I showed up at her stall, she was mid-move. And that's why all the tables were stacked up. They were getting ready to move. And then that's why there was just a stool sitting there with no table. And then I showed up and I gave my order, and then she gave me my order, and then she packed up and moved. But then I had to eventually move as well. So good, that soup. And I had one of their yogurts. They made the yogurt there as well. I love yogurt here. I have it all the time. So that was quite the adventure. And before this, I guess it was after the pizza. I had the pizza first, and then I walked a very short distance, and I saw this amazing snack. Well, to be honest, I didn't know how amazing it was at the beginning, but it was a plastic cup and with half filled with green pudding. That's what it looked like, green pudding of some kind. Now, me being a dummy, I didn't make the connection right away. Avocado, obviously it's avocado, but I didn't know that. It's like pureed, an avocado smoothie, basically. But it looked really good. It looked like something you could spoon up. And I thought, oh, I'll have one of those. And the same common sense applied here, where I just walked up to the avocado smoothie stall, and there was no confusion about why I was there. They made the logical leap. that I would like an avocado smoothie. So anyway, the logic, I just love it. So then they looked at me and said, oh, one? And I said, one. And then they indicated the table, sit down. Oh, I said, I love this country. I was so happy. And I went back and I sat down, and then they grabbed the cup of pureed avocado. Yeah, avocado. And then they opened up a cooler. And then they started scooping big scoops of vanilla ice cream into the avocado, filled up the rest of the cup with vanilla ice cream, and then topped it off with nuts. It's like, I swear I heard a chorus of angels singing from the heavens when I saw them doing that. It was like, ice cream. Oh, I've been dying for some ice cream. Funny story, funny aside. I went there with Daryl, as I said, on Thursday night. And I think I shot some video, not very much. It wasn't a big deal. And Daryl shot video of the market as well. He was doing kind of a POV, just a market walk, just recording the atmosphere and the ambiance of the market. And Daryl and I got separated a lot. So I was just sort of walking through the market on my own. He was off on his own somewhere taking video. And then we'd meet up back up again. And then we were just leaving the market. And the whole time I was walking through the market, I wanted some kind of ice cream, but I just didn't see any anywhere. I saw no smoothies or ice cream based drinks, cold, milky drinks, nothing like that. So I didn't have the thing I wanted. And then we're leaving the market, and then Daryl wanted to go. He had to do one more thing. And we happened to be in front of a lotteria fast food joint. And then Daryl, knowing my fondness for ice cream, I probably said something about ice cream. And then he says, oh, lotteria. You know, why don't you go get your ice cream at the lotteria? In fact, get two of them. I'll have one, and he'll go do his shopping. I can stand in line. I can get two ice cream, and then we can come back, and he can have ice cream. I can have ice cream. So cool. So I go into lotteria, and I'm there for felt like an eternity. And of course, by the time all the dust settled, just giant crocodile tears, no ice cream at all. There were people ahead of me in line that were so slow. It was, it was like a Curb Your Enthusiasm moment for me, a Larry David kind of moment, because I'm standing in line, and the whole idea was a quick transaction, fast food, bang, ice cream, thank you, got my ice cream, we're done. If I knew it was going to take 30 minutes and I had to work like a crazy man to get this ice cream, I wouldn't have bothered. It's not that important to me. Anyway, so I went in there and I stood in line, and the people ahead of me, man, you'd think they were ordering for an army, making choices, thinking about choices, changing their orders, asking questions. These were foreigners, all doing it through the language barrier. And then they finished their ordering, which took forever. And then they wanted to pay with a card. So they handed over a card, and now they've got to enter their code, but it wouldn't work. The charge wouldn't go through. They had a long conversation about that. And then the next guy, part of the same group, here, try my card. His card doesn't work. The third guy, here, try my. It's like, and they're saying to them, like, don't you have an eWallet? Can't we do this? Can't you scan the QR code? No, we don't have that. We're foreigners. We only have these cards. Try this card. And I was just like, just going out of my mind. I even let something slip. I couldn't help it. At some point, I was like mumbling under my breath, like, oh my gosh, what? Can't you? And they turn around and look at me. And I'm like, sorry. This is just very, very frustrating for me. You guys are taking so long. They eventually got, at that point, right, they were just finishing up their transaction, and then some new people came in, and they just cut right in front of me. Just boom, right in front. Cut me off and went right up to the counter. And then I was back behind them now. And I kind of looked at the woman at the counter because she was aware of me. We'd made a lot of eye contact. She knew I was next, but she just started serving these new people who just pushed ahead of me. So I just shook my head like, oh, forget it. I wanted some ice cream. Some soft ice cream would be nice. but not, I don't want to work this hard to get it. So I just kind of looked at her and gave her a look. It's like, oh. And then I just turned around and left. But as soon as I left, I'm standing there now waiting for Daryl. And turns out the people who pushed ahead of me, they just turned around and they walked out. So I guess they pushed ahead of me, decided they didn't want Lotteria food, and then they just left. And now there was nobody at the counter. So I went to go to the counter, but of course someone got ahead of me. I was second in line again, but their transaction went relatively smoothly. And then I got to the front, and I'm kind of smiling at the woman because I don't know if she saw everything I had gone through, but I felt like I had been through the 10 rings of hell or something just to get to the front of this line to order ice cream. It was kind of an amusing Curb Your Enthusiasm experience, and I grabbed the menu there on the counter and I pointed at they had like chocolate sundae in a cup, and they, just soft ice cream, and you pour chocolate sauce. I saw people getting it, so I thought, okay, that's the way the ice cream is here. And I said to her, 2 of these, and then she said in English, the machine is broken. So I was like, of course it is. Of course the soft ice cream machine isn't working. That's just the story. It's the story of McDonald's, as everyone knows. It's a story of all these restaurants. I don't know how it is that their ice cream machines are always broken, but they always are. And people got ice cream while I was standing in line, so it was working earlier, but something about my magical aura broke the machine before I got to the front of the line. But anyway, so that was my ice cream experience. And now this was Saturday night at the same market. I was not going to go anywhere near Lotteria. As I said to Daryl, I swore up and down. I mean, I never go to Lotteria anyway. I don't know anything about the place. Maybe I've been to one once in my life, I can't remember. But I swore to Daryl that I'm never going to go to a Lotteria ever again. That was such a terrible experience. But anyway, there it was Saturday night, and I ordered this avocado smoothie, and they just filled the cup with delicious vanilla ice cream, nuts on top. It was like one of the best things I've ever had. I think it's called Kembo, I think. Kembo, Kem being cream or ice cream, and then bo, maybe that's avocado, I'm not sure. It took me the longest time to even figure out that it was avocado. My brain is not that quick when it comes to vegetables and fruits and things like that. So, but that was so good. So by the time the night was over, what did I have? I had the Vietnamese pizza. I had the avocado puree with ice cream and nuts. And then I had this rice cakey thing with a coconut filling. That was also very good. Then I had strawberries. And this whole region of Dalat is famous for its fruit and strawberries because of the cool climate, the mountain, the hilly slopes. I guess you can make really good strawberries here. And strawberries are a big deal. So as I was walking through the market, I was thinking, okay, strawberries have to be one of my snacks. And to be honest, strawberries, I'm not a big fan. I'm not. One strawberry is good, a big juicy strawberry, but a whole lot of them, like strawberry cake, strawberry flavor, I'm not a fan for whatever reason. People rave about strawberries, but they've never done it for me. But I thought I should have strawberries, and I saw all these amazing strawberries everywhere, come in big cups. And I was passing one of these stalls, one of these restaurants where it just looked inviting. It was open, there wasn't a crowd of people, there were tables and chairs in the back. So then I kind of went up, without really looking, without doing my due diligence, I kind of pointed at the display of strawberry in cups. And when I was looking at the strawberries, again, common sense came into play. And the woman there went, "One? Yes, please, one." And then I sat down at the table and they brought it to me. And then I'm sitting there trying to get set up. I've got the cup of strawberries and I'm trying to set up my GoPro, and I'm putting my knapsack down. I probably had to change the battery, change the memory card, whatever it is I'm doing. I'm trying to get organized. And this kid came running up because this kid saw me, a foreigner, was kind of interested in whatever I was doing and just wanted to hang out with me. Came running up and hip checked the table, and the strawberries just went flying. Cup falls over, half of the strawberries fall all over the floor. That was pretty funny. So I didn't have to eat all of the strawberries, and that was a good thing because these strawberries weren't very good. I think I saw much better strawberries in the market. These ones were small and hard and sour and kind of crunchy and just not very pleasant. It looked like they were all like, they didn't have that strawberry shape. Like if you go to a super expensive supermarket, of course, they only have the best strawberries and they all have that classic strawberry shape. These ones were like the broken rice of strawberries. These are all the strawberries that nobody wanted, that fell on the ground and rotted a little bit and are bruised a little bit and are all malformed and misshapen. That probably means they're better strawberries, right? Because there is this idea that modern vegetables and fruits are so bred to deliver the perfect shape and color that maybe some of the nutrients are lost. People talk about stuff like that. So maybe these were real natural strawberries because they were ugly and weirdly shaped. They weren't big, juicy, bred strawberries. These were natural strawberries, but they weren't very good at all. But I ate all of them, all the way down to the bottom. And then I had the crab soup, and then I had the yogurt, and maybe I had another snack after that. I can't remember. But anyway, I started telling that story more about how delightful it was to go through this market and have a bunch of snacks. I had a similar experience in Canton. I went to the night market and I had a local friend acting as my guide there. And even with his help, it was a very difficult experience because it was so tight and jammed, so many scooters, you couldn't move. It felt very out of control. And there was no place to sit. So you can order all the food you want. And if you're holding a GoPro in one hand and now you've got a bag of food in the other, and you're like, okay, now what do I do? You can't enjoy the food because there's nowhere to sit. And this market in Dalat was perfect. I mean, perfect would be chairs that were real chairs with real tables. These were tiny plastic stools and tiny plastic tables, and I'm all hunched over them like a gargoyle or a 6-foot praying mantis, all kind of twisted, and because there isn't enough room for me there, and I'm not used to sitting that low to the ground. So it's a bit of it's a bit tiring to sit like that all night long, and then you're trying to eat and you're all kind of, but other than that, I mean, at least there were places to sit and there was elbow room, and walking around was nice. And the fact that there were no scooters was very nice indeed. But I'm going to make another cup of coffee and then I'll tell the scooter story, and maybe, unless something else occurs to me, that will be the last story for this behind the scenes. All right, I have my cup of coffee. Ah, so good. Yeah, scooters. I want to tell kind of a scooter story because on Saturday night, that was the night, as I said, when the market becomes pedestrians only, Saturday and Sunday night. The main boulevard and some of the side streets, they have a map there that shows the vehicle-free neighborhood. They have a name for it. I can't remember what the sign said. So I was very interested to go there and see if this was true and what does it mean. I thought maybe all it would mean is no cars and no trucks, but the scooters would still be racing through and causing trouble. But I was very pleased when I showed up to find that there were barriers in place at the bottom and the top, all the entrance points to the main market road. And there were men there in some kind of uniform monitoring things so that people were not driving their scooters through. Funny thing though is they would let people go through with scooters, but they couldn't ride them, so they had to push them. And all these people kept riding up on their scooters thinking they could just go through, but then the guards would stop them, and the local people seemed kind of surprised, like they didn't know it was not allowed to have a scooter there at that time. But anyway, they would get off the scooter and start walking them through. But what annoyed me and amused me is that these people who were pushing their scooters through these crowds of people still honked their horn. I mean, it's just like a habit. It's like an addiction. And they're going through there like honk, 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 honk. And they would actually push the scooter to get it up to a speed faster than people were walking. It was like, because they have a scooter, to them it feels weird to go at a walking pace. So if it were me, for example, I would never do it. I would never dream of taking a scooter down a busy pedestrian path or a market. Even if it's allowed to take a scooter there, I wouldn't. It's just not something I would do. I would feel like I'm being very rude to everyone. So I would park the scooter and I would walk, or I would go around. But if, for example, say I was riding a bicycle and they said, oh no, you can't ride a bike here, but you can walk it, I would walk the bike at a walking pace. So I would be going along at the same speed as everyone around me. But these people who are pushing their scooter, I think in their mind they're thinking, well, I have a scooter, the whole point is to go fast. So even though I'm walking, I have to push my scooter faster than everybody else is walking. So they're actually trying to push through the crowds, and then they would honk their horn anyway. So like the whole point of saying no scooters allowed is to prevent people barreling through the crowds on scooters and honking their horns and annoying everyone. But even though they banned, you can't ride a scooter, people were still doing the exact same thing, but just slower and longer, because it takes them longer to get through the pedestrian market. And now from end to end, they're like trying to push their scooter through the crowds, and they're just blasting and blasting and blasting on the horn. And it does amaze me most of the time around the world when behaviors like this, they're just so common that it doesn't bother anyone. So it just surprises me that like 99% of the people at this market, of course, were Vietnamese. There were a scattering of foreign visitors like me, but not that many. Everyone there was essentially Vietnamese. The people walking were Vietnamese. The people pushing the scooters and honking their horns were Vietnamese. And all the people walking would just hear the horn, look behind them, and then they would get out of the way and let the guy go past, and he'd honk at the next people and honk and honk and honk and honk. And that went on the entire time. I thought that was kind of amusing. It just seems weird to me that no local people are bothered by this behavior, because it just seems so obviously rude to me with my cultural background, my cultural lens, put it that way. And then towards the end of the night, I was there relatively late, I don't know, on into 10, 11 o'clock, somewhere in there, maybe short of midnight. I'm not entirely sure of the time. But I guess at a certain point, they removed the barriers. So it was no vehicles allowed, but then at 10:30 or something like that, suddenly the barriers are removed, the guards disappear, and now we were back to the people just blasting through on their scooters. And at that point, I happened to be leaving the market, so I was walking all the way from the far end of the market all the way back to the beginning at the entrance, and then from there back to my hotel. And the entire walk from the beginning to the end, I had these people behind me on the scooters just blaring, blaring, blaring on their horn. And I just found it to be quite rude behavior. But again, that's a cultural lens through which I experience these things. And I admit, I got a little bit irritated. I mean, okay, you're going to ride your scooter through this night market with thousands of people on foot. Why you do that, I don't understand. I would never do it. I think it's dumb to do it. I think it's rude to do it. But okay, that's what you do in this country, so go do it. But do you have to be so aggressive about it? They have this arrogant mannerism about them that everybody should just get out of their way because they're on a scooter. So I have the right to go as fast as I want, and I can just get right behind you and just blast the horn at you rather than just sort of waiting until there's an opening. I find it all very, very odd. And yeah, I got a little bit irritated as I was walking along, and then I would just refuse to move. So I was just walking along normally, just walking along with the crowd, and then I'd hear somebody blasting the horn behind me, and I would just keep walking at that point. I say, hey, I'm not even going to look. I'm not getting out of your way. If you can find a way to go around me, it's all yours. Try to get around me, but I'm not going to walk the entire length of the market constantly looking over my shoulder and diving to the side to get out of your way. You chose to drive a scooter through this crowded pedestrian market. That's on you. So I'm just going to walk, and you can get by me if you can, but I'm not going to get out of your way. I was getting very petty, but oh my gosh, there were so many of them, and I had to get out of the way of so many of them. Eventually, I just dug in my heels. Okay, that's it. I'm just not moving anymore. This is getting ridiculous. So that was a negative sort of ending to the evening, but what had been up until that point a very pleasant evening. A lot of fun, great food, very enjoyable market. You just have to put up with the scooters. And I think that brings me to the end of this behind the scenes video. I have a couple of more nights here at this hotel. I'm probably going to extend my stay in Dalat a bit longer. I'm feeling a little bit of tension, but I always feel this tension that there's so many things I want to do in Dalat. There's so many more places I could go, explore, experience, but at the same time, I also have to spend time editing video. And if I do, it's a struggle to work through the video I've already shot in Dalat. I have so much video already, it was going to take me a long time to edit it. And if I go out to a new attraction, rent a scooter and go exploring in the countryside and go to all the waterfalls and visit, I'll be shooting video at that time as well. So all it means is I'm just stockpiling more and more video. So at some point it gets to be a bit much. So I do feel this tension a little bit, where I feel pressure, like, man, why am I sitting in here editing video? I should be out there doing things. But of course, yeah, you have to strike. As a YouTuber, as an aspiring YouTuber, you have to strike a balance, right, between living and actually working, because it is pretty much a full-time job. It's more than a full-time job. So you can't, yeah. And I enjoy it. As I said, I do enjoy the editing process. But I do wish I could clone myself. I could have a out there living Doug and an in here editing video Doug. That would be a nice combination. So with that bizarre thought, I will end this video. Enjoy the rest of my coffee, get back to doing some editing. I'll probably grab a couple of Banh Mi later in the evening. It's about 5 o'clock right now, something like that. And maybe I'll do a Google search for the best Banh Mi location in my neighborhood. Maybe I can finally find a really good one that I feel at home at. So that's it. Shutting down. Hope you enjoyed some of my stories. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.